Hello again and welcome back to our course on Excel 2013. In this section we're going to look at find and replace. If you've used a recent version of Excel 2007 or 2010, then the functionality hasn't very significantly changed in this version, so you might well skip this section or perhaps just work through it very quickly. For everybody else, then I suggest you follow this, because apart from find and replace, we'll look at a couple of other useful associated features as well. Now what we're going to look at first of all is on the Home tab. If you select the Home tab, and then at the right hand end you'll see in the editing group a Find and Select button. If you click on that, you get a little menu, and the contents of that menu are very interesting in that there's several commands on there. We're only going to look at one or two of them in detail here, but some of them are actually interesting perhaps for you to look into on your own. There's a group in the middle: formulas, comments, conditional formatting, constant state of validation. Formulas and comments you'll know about, the others won't mean much to you at the moment, but they will a little bit later on. These are useful ways of finding the occurrence of, for example, formulas. So if you click on that one, finding formulas, it will actually highlight to you and take you to the cells that have got formulas in them. Now all the members of that group and commands do that sort of thing, and if you're dealing particularly with a large workbook, those find and select features are useful. Another very useful feature on this little menu here is the Go To. Now the Go To lets you go to, for instance, the name that I've defined here. I can go to the name rate per mile. So if I want to see where that is, click on OK, and it'll take me to rate per mile. And that is where the name rate per mile is defined. If I go into Go To, if I then click on Special, it will let me go to a number of different occurrences of different types of features in my workbook. So there are several commands on that menu that are very useful in terms of finding specific features you want to in your workbook. Now we don't have time to go through all of those here, but I do want to look at find and replace, and that's what we're going to start with, and we're going to start with find. Now as you'll see, whether you select find or replace there, you finish up with this find and replace dialog. And the principle behind the find and replace dialog is that if you want to find something in a workbook and you want to replace it with something else, either as a one-off or perhaps repetitively throughout the whole workbook, or maybe throughout one worksheet, this is the dialog you use to define what you want to find and what you want to replace it with. Now let's take a very simple example. Let's suppose that on this mileage sheet that we've been working on, we want to change branch office to local office everywhere it occurs in this mileage claim. Now a first step is to find branch office wherever it occurs. So let's suppose I just put in the word branch. If I say find next, watch what happens. It finds, in this case, the first occurrence of branch, and it's in that expression branch office. If I say find next, it will take me through them one at a time, and if I'm looking for a particular one, that's a good way of finding it. If I say find all, then what it's going to do is to find them all and basically give me a list of them down here. Now that list lets me look for one in a particular place, cell B18, C20, and so on. So I can see where all of those occurrences are, gives me a list of them, and it also tells me at the bottom there that 13 cells were found. So that in its simplest form is how to find something. Now I can of course pull that down a little, see that list a little bit better. Supposing now though that I try the options button on the right there, because apart from trying to find the word branch, I may have some other specific things to specify. For example, am I looking at the current sheet, or do I want to look in the whole workbook? That's the key decision to make. Let's suppose I say sheet in this case, because there is only one sheet in this workbook, but if there was more than one and I wanted to look for what I'm looking for in more than one, I would specify workbook. Do I want to search by rows or by columns? So as I'm going through the succession, find next, find next, find next, do I want to go down the columns or across the rows? Again, for what I'm doing, this doesn't really matter, but it may be significant, particularly if you've got a very big workbook or a big worksheet in a workbook. What are you looking in? Now, are you looking in formulas? Are you looking in the values? Or are you looking in comments? Now, in this case, where we're dealing with text, either formulas or values will give us the same effect. But if I was searching in numbers, then we've already seen formulas and values in cells are very different things. So let me just put that on values. Now, there are two other important settings here. One of them is match case. Now, if it says match case, it means that with my search term, branch, written like that, B-R-A-N-C-H, I'm looking to match the case. If I click on find next, what do you think will happen? The answer is it finds that next occurrence of branch office. But if I said match case, what do you think would happen? It would say that it can't find one because there isn't an occurrence of the word branch in my workbook without the capital B. So if I wanted to match the case, I would have to have capital B, which may be what I was looking for anyway, of course. The other important setting is whether you need to match the entire cell contents. So if I'm looking for branch and I have this checked, it will only identify a match if the total content of the cell is just that word branch. So if I click on find next now, what would happen? That's right, it can't find any cell in which the whole contents is branch with a capital B. So if I uncheck that, do the search again, then of course it will now find that succession of cells with the word branch as just part of the cell's contents. So as you can see, that's a pretty good way of looking for content in a cell. You can make the find even more flexible and more specific by also specifying a format. There's a format button in the top right here. At the moment we've got no format set, so we're looking for the word branch as part of, not the entire cell contents, part of the cell contents in a cell. We've got to match the case, so it's got to be capital B, lowercase r, etc. And it's got to be in a cell value. But we can also specify the format, and we could, for instance, say the format of the cell must be text or general, or perhaps with a number we might say currency. If you're not worried about what the format is, you can just clear the format here and it will find it in a cell of any format. Now that's a good one for you to experiment with, and let's finish off now just by having a look at replace. So let me just go back to what the original question was, which is I want to replace every occurrence of branch office with local office. Now the safest way of doing that is to search for the whole term. If I knew that I only used the word branch in the term branch office, I could just type in branch and say replace branch there with local. But that's probably a little bit dangerous, so let me put my find term now as office. And then click on the Replace tab at the top of the dialog there, and another set of boxes comes up, Replace with, and I can put in there the term I want to replace it with. Now notice I can also, as part of this, replace the format as well. So for instance, if I wanted something, say, in accounting format, I could replace it with something else in currency format, or something in text, replace it with the same thing in general. Now clearly there are some things you can't do, so straightforward text putting it into currency format might cause a problem, but within what is reasonable you can also change the format as well. Now on this occasion I'm saying branch office replace with local office. If I'm absolutely confident in this and say yep, that's exactly what I want to do, I can just click this button here, replace all, or, and this is normally how I do things, I do a find next first to make sure I've got the right find term set up, and I look and I say yep, branch office, that's right. I look at that and I say, let me do a replace and see what happens. So this is not the replace all, this is the single replace. Click on replace. Oh yep, local office, that's fine. And when I'm happy that I've got it set up, I just click on replace all. It happens and it says we made 12 replacements. Of course the first one of the 13 I did as my test, so 12 more, so I'm happy that it's done the right thing. So now there's a little job for you to do. I'd like you to do that using example 7 yourself. So do the same find and replace that I've just done, but also there's an error on there in the odometer start and end readings. I don't know quite how it happened, but the mileage on the car isn't 41,000 and something. Everywhere it should be 31,000 and something. Now I don't think that will affect my mileage claim in terms of the amount of miles or the amount of money, but we ought to correct that from saying 41,015 for example to 31,015. So if you'd like to change branch office to local office and that change as well using the same approach, I'd very much appreciate it, and then my attempt at that you can see in example 8. And that's it for find and replace. I'll see you in the next section.